just to me another reason why the prosecution would want to lean so heavily on Tuitt was a convicted felon. He's not supposed to be in possession of a gun. So therefore, it shouldn't matter if he was confronted or dealing with some type of heated argument where somebody else pulled a gun on him. I'm wondering if they're removing any possibility or any type of line that could have gotten to a self-defense situation. No, so the unalive weapon was not, they're saying the ballistics, there's no evidence that the pink gun was fired, according to the ballistics. That a 9mm was recovered, a 9mm bullet was recovered from the body. I still think it's weird he was shot at contact right in the chest. And they recover one bullet, but then they're saying he was shot 6 times. What happened to these other 5? They just have the shell casings. It's a little weird. Okay, so, and Aaron's saying, so Aaron must have rewound. So it's the other Aaron and Aaron. You guys are asking great questions. Aaron says, so it's a pink herring. And then Adventure Aaron says, wait, right before I came in, Abadi's PowerPoint said the victim was shot at the end of the 3rd floor hallway. Elevator surveillance was from the 3rd floor hallway. Even weirder now. And McBurney mentioned something pre-trial that he was a bit confused too. About, like, I guess he got confused with the place of arrest being on the 3rd floor of somewhere else versus the shooting being on the floor of the actual shooting incident. So who knows? We'll have to see. Susan, good to see you. Nicole still has her charges pending. So, and Tuitt wants her as counsel. And Tuitt, I mean, Nicole Fegan, I think from just looking at her record, like her success record, I gotta clarify here, she gets acquittals. She does her thing. The judge even said, I appreciate you for not trying to throw a curveball. Like, she didn't try to file any Jackson Denno motions to oppose, whether or not her client was properly Mirandized. She's not disputing that he was properly Mirandized. I think we're going to see why. I think we're going to see that the statement, there's a good chance the jury might think his statement could come off as truthful. That he just didn't want to, he heard gunshots going off, he came outside, didn't want to be in the area. Ayana, I can't make sense of this. You shoot at someone 6 times, you miss 5 times, land 1, but the one you land is right up on someone's chest. I mean, it might make more sense if we see, like, where the defects are. I don't know. Yep, and Aaron's pulling the quote. Thank you. Aaron says, cameras located throughout the property. Some work and some are not operational. Camera captures shooting, but from a distance. So it's going to be a time, you guys. And this is only supposed to be a 2 to 3 day trial, so we'll see it all within the next few days. We're going to hear what Nicole has to say here. I do want to say thanks to Tatum, not just for hanging out, but for becoming a member. Thanks so much. For always, forever, for life, member for 14 months. Holy moly. Says the judge has a pleasant voice. A lot of information from the judge, but you guys were commenting that, he's going on, but good voice, and that he speaks the same way to the defendants, which that's nice to hear, that a judge is just as humanizing to defendants, those that are accused, as he would be to, the counsel in the courtroom and the jurors that come in, members of the public. I think that's a great trait of Judge McBurney. And Ohio Grown Joe says, what shenanigans are we going to see this trial? There might be some. There is a way that this could be a strong case, convince me beyond a reasonable doubt. But I don't even think they're promising all that much with opening, which surprises me. Usually they promise a whole lot, and then they present what they have, and I interpret it differently. They're not really even promising to have all that much here. So I don't know. Let's see, you guys. Yeah, we got to find out about this pink gun. They found it sitting next to the victim. So we're an hour and 57 minutes in. Let me timestamp this for replay crew.
There you go.
Oh, another PowerPoint, guys. She's ready.
Good morning, guys. It's 11 o'clock. We're here.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Nicole Fegan, and I have the privilege of representing this young man, whose family all knows as CT, because those are the initials to his name. Ladies and gentlemen, before I start with opening statements, I first want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you for taking notes and thank you for caring. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are here for today took us a long time to pick all of you on Thursday. And you probably think there's a more efficient way to pick a jury. But the reality is efficiency isn't as important as being right. And what being right in a criminal jury trial is having intelligent and thoughtful people willing to listen to all the evidence, apply the law, and seek the truth. And that's what we are confident we found that in each and every one of you. Ladies and gentlemen, the role of the attorneys is for us at opening statements to provide you a roadmap of what we expect the evidence to show. And what you know, and from your experience and from things that you have lived through, is that a story comes with who, what, when, where, why, and how. And so the state tells you who, the state tells you what, the state tells you where, the state tells you how, they say 666. Ladies and gentlemen, but anything we say isn't evidence. That's not what the evidence, but the state didn't talk to you about why. 5. The state sat there and drove the number 6. 6 shots.
Where are the other 5?
But they didn't tell you about the 5 minutes.
Oh.
The 5 minutes that this young man, who the investigator will tell you his name is Smoke. That's what they call him. 5 minutes that man confronted my client for a verbal argument outside of an apartment complex, knowing the police were right there. For 5 minutes, and it is on video. And the video is exactly why that man should not be sitting there. It is at a distance, but it's easily to be zoomed in. And when you zoom in, you'll see for 5 minutes, my client will back away, Smoke will follow. Will back away, Smoke will follow.
I think it's Smoke's gun.
That walk through the
I'm gonna call it. I think the defense's theory is that's going to be Smoke's gun, and they didn't test it for fingerprints.
Confrontation, which eventually brings them up to the top of the steps. And so in the video, it'll look this big, it'll be small. But when you zoom up, what you see is when Smoke goes and grabs his firearm. You'll see it with his right hand when he goes and grabs his firearm, brings it from the back to the front, and that's how that firearm gets on the ground.
It's the pink one.
My client doesn't let him shoot him first. That's what the evidence will show. 6 shots after 5 minutes of trying to defuse the situation until the man pulls a firearm. Ladies and gentlemen, the state kept saying it's unjustified because they want me not to say it is justified. Because evidence will show that had he not acted, he wouldn't be sitting there. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what the evidence will show. That's what this surveillance will show. So while they're showing you pictures of the apartment, that doesn't matter. None of that matters except the video. So, again, anything I say is an evidence. Anything the state says is an evidence. So let's talk about some evidence that you'll see. The evidence in this case will be that Smoke brandishes his firearm first. The evidence will be testimony from the eyewitness, Mr. Fort, because what Mr. Fort will tell you and why the state says this argument is so unnecessary is because Smoke is confronting my client over a female. For 5 minutes, he's in his face.
I believe it.
For 5 minutes, my client's just trying to back away. He's like, the police are right there. What are we doing? It's middle of the day. And it's not until Smoke gets my client up the stairs, follows him up the stairs, pulls his firearm, confronts him face to face. And you know how you can tell from the surveillance video? Body language. Because you'll see the eyewitness, Mr. Fort, he's kind of just walking around. You also see he was also armed. you'll see that he has his back walking towards the apartment, and that at the same time Smoke brandishes his firearm, because remember, there's no audio. You can see him turn around and be like, oh, maybe I should grab my firearm too. Because that's what Smoke was there to do that day. That's what the evidence will show. Ladies and gentlemen, first.
Because hold on, and it was hard to catch up with Abate because he starts going on about Roxy living there and there's 2 apartments. So did Smoke not actually live in this building? Did Smoke not live in this building? Because remember, this wasn't like necessarily late at night where you might be going to hang out before you guys roll out to the club. Because Club Crucial's right down the road. I don't know. Did I miss a detail? Was that Smoke's residence? Because I got the impression he was. But now I'm feeling like he wasn't. Because Nicole just said that's what he was there to do. So I need the full like map with the dots of who lived where.
Responders, as the state already told you, they were already on scene. That's why this was never supposed to happen. It's the middle of the day. Video everywhere. If my client wanted to just shoot the man, he has 5 minutes to do it. But he never brandishes a gun until Smoke brandishes first. And at that point, he just doesn't wait to get shot. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll hear from crime scene tech. You'll get over 80 pictures. And what you'll see in the video is that how you know that firearm was brandished is because as soon as the shooting occurs, you see the firearm fall. The firearm the state already told you was on the ground close by because it was already ready.
This is crazy.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, you will have the shell casings, you'll have his firearm. The crime scene even describes the lighter he had on him was also shaped like a small gun. Now you'll also have gunshot residue, kits that never were tested for some reason. Because then they don't want him to say, well, maybe the victim was shooting too. Because that's what the evidence will show in this case. That's what the surveillance will show in this case. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll hear from GBI. You'll hear from the lead detective in this case who spoke with my client. You'll hear from the medical examiner who will also say, wait until you hear how the medical examiner indicates where Smoke was shot. Because he even tries to say there's back shots. The shooting happens in seconds. And you will not once see a back shot in that surveillance. What you will see is my client getting up steps over 5 minutes. We're talking about less than 10 feet of distance. You'll see him get up steps. It's the middle of August. You'll see Smoke grab his firearm with his right arm. You'll see when he goes to move the firearm and Mr. Forte turns back towards the confrontation, because at that point he was walking away trying to defuse. Walking away from the confrontation, and then you'll see the shooting occur. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll hear from my client's aunt, who will come in here and tell you, yes, that's my nephew. You'll hear from Ms. Parks, as the state said. And you'll hear from Mr. Forte's mom, who immediately, when the police came, she told the police it was self-defense.
Immediately.
She told me what happened.
We didn't hear about her from a body.
What was said immediately to investigators in this case. So that's the testimony. And as you heard from the judge, you will hear testimony, you will receive exhibits, and that will be the evidence in this case. As far as exhibits go, you'll have the 911, you'll have the CAD report, you'll have the crime scene pictures and the surveillance footage. Please look at body language, because you'll see a gentleman and a young lady walk through the argument probably about 2 minutes before the shooting occurs, 3 minutes into the confrontation. You'll see them walk by, you'll see how they react to what's going on behind them, and you'll see how Mr. Forte reacts at the moment that Smoke retrieves his firearm. You'll receive the autopsy report, and there will be autopsy photos in this case. You will see the ring surveillance. You'll see the crime scene sketch that's not at it looks like things are farther than they are, but you'll be able to tell from that. That's just human error. But in the interview, you'll hear lead detective tell my client, well, we have the video surveillance. And my client says, well, then why am I here? Because if you have it, then you see it was self-defense.
Oh, I want to hear this statement.
So instead, after they arrest him, when they wake him up in the morning, they he's like, actually, you know what though? I just heard those shots and I didn't have anything involved. Of course. Because that young man lived a different type of life and was raised in a world that's different than some other people have lived. You'll have firearms report, you'll see the test fires, and that'll come from GBI. So that's what the evidence will be. The evidence will be the testimony, the evidence will be the exhibits, and the surveillance. And like, you're gonna have to watch the surveillance a bunch of times because you really have to zoom in because it's at the very end of the video, and it's a shame because they have one of these circle videos up top, but it wasn't operational. But if you zoom in, you can see the body language, and you clearly see when Smoke's arm is at a right angle, grabbing his firearm first. And so my client just didn't let him shoot him first. But that doesn't mean that young man should be sitting at this table. That's what you guys are here to decide. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show that Smoke started this entire confrontation over a female.
What a slide. Guys, if you're not looking at the screen, if you're in the bushes, shout out to you hardworking folks in the bushes. This PowerPoint slide just says, Smoke started this entire incident. And she's reiterating for the second time that it was over a female. And maybe that, I don't even think, do you guys think that that's hard to imagine? I don't find it to be hard to imagine because I've seen it go down. I used to work in nightlife. When it was our event, I'd often work the door, and so many fights would happen because somebody would be trying to go home with the same girl at the end of the night, or somebody would run into somebody's ex or new man and they'd be fighting, or girls would fight with each other over the guys too. It's really not that unrealistic. And then there's so many cases, and then personal experiences where I either have watched the case or known that the background of something that went down between friends that ended really badly was involving, we'll use the word paramour. We'll use Adrian Love's word paramour. And going back to the Moontung thing, the whole drive-by shooting with Moontung, the state's theory is that that was all over, what was her name? She testified. I can't remember her name, but that was the theory. Like, that drive-by shooting was two ops shooting. They were messing with the same girl. So I don't even think it's that unusual or unheard of for whatever this jury's makeup is, right? We accidentally saw some of the jury. It looked like 3 women were shown. The half face that we saw to me looks like a white girl, maybe 25 to 35 years old. We only saw like 3 heads, but they all looked like women to me. And I think it's plausible. I think it's highly likely that close to 12 people on the jury could say, like, I can see it. People do stupid things. So, yeah, and I think it is a bigger sentiment. I don't think it's just my own world bubble. I think it's something that people hear and know that it's way too common. It shouldn't happen. Oh, yeah, trivia. There you go. Thanks, Other People's Drama. Yeah, it happens all the time. Plenty of people have lost their lives and freedom over a boyfriend or girlfriend. It's really sad. Yep. And Tatum, the more, and I think I have my own bias, my own bubble, but just seeing the way that the 131 and 133 were tacked into the indictment, and then watching how a body shaped his case, and then hearing this bombshell about the pink gun. If you show me even one frame and it looks like someone's got their arm, she said a right angle, a 90-degree angle, that makes me look at my arm on the screen. when you go to pull something out of your waistband or your back pocket, your arm, that's the motion your arm goes up into. If we see that on frame, that's really powerful for the defense here, and it's really bad that a body danced around it. I think, yeah, and Trevius Smith was Paramore. And then was Taisha Alexander, was that Polka? I think that was Shannon Stillwell. I think Taisha was the, again, speaking of these open airways, right? I mentioned in the chat, not out loud, that, these open airways to apartment buildings seem to be a place where a lot of trouble happens. And I believe Taisha Alexander, she self-defended herself. She defended herself in an open airway when she was coming home one night and said these girls were trying to jump her. And she testified to it, but it had also been viral. It was a viral video a few months earlier, maybe a year earlier, before she took the stand in one of those just apartment complex common areas. So, just a lot. And yeah, Brian B., good point. Even if the lighter was shaped like a, there's subjective and objective reasonableness. If you were in that moment, what would you be thinking if somebody was going to pull something out like that? So if we're getting this mention of a lighter, and the state's going to argue, well, it was just a lighter, then it becomes an argument of, well, he was doing something and reaching out of his pocket. Was it reasonable for, in that context, was it reasonable, not just plain someone's reaching for a lighter and they get shot to death, but somebody's in a heated argument, maybe saying certain things. Was it reasonable for the person to, in that moment, think that they were at risk of serious bodily harm and needed to protect themselves? Yeah, the breezeway. I'm calling it an airway. I'm glad you guys know what I mean. But yeah, powerful slide, I think.
That my client and Mr. Forte consistently diffused. It's the middle of the day in August. The police are outside already. That Smoke retrieves his firearm first.
Slide,
that
third
he
slide.
continued to threaten my client's life. And you can tell from Mr. Forte's body language when the entire time he was just kind of walking around like, we're arguing over a female? What are we doing? You don't know the police are right here. We don't need to be doing all this. But it wasn't until Smoke grabs his firearm that's when you realize, oh, Mr. Forte has a firearm too. Because he starts to make sure that he's not the one that gets got. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show that Smoke would not stop.
Oh, I want to see her do more self-defense cases because she's going through, and she's doing it in a way that's in layman's terms. He shows up. He's not supposed to be here. You got to defend. You can stand your ground. You got to defend your castle. He reached first. He's the provocateur. He's the one that provoked this incident. It's not like my client was doing it and the other guy, Smoke, was only pulling out a gun in response to CT, to Tuitt, or maybe to Forte. And then there was no other option. There was no chance to retreat, even if we wanted to. Smoke would not stop. It had to be ended. I had to give a proportionate response. He's pulling out what looks to be a firearm, and we recover a firearm next to him. That clearly the state does not believe this firearm. They're arguing, the state is arguing this firearm not just doesn't belong to the defendant, but they made the point in their opening, ballistics show it wasn't fired whatsoever. Adam knew ahead of time that there was good reason for somebody to believe and for an attorney to argue that gun there on ground belonged to victim, gun on ground is why defendant was firing. That's why Adam had to put that in his PowerPoint. Ballistics show pink gun never fired. Nope, it's fine. Just pretend it doesn't exist. It plays no role in this incident whatsoever. And Nicole's laying out. The provocateur was the victim. The threat of force, severe, serious, firearm. You saw the pink firearm. They just told you it was next to him. No way out, no other option, because the victim wouldn't stop. And she's meeting those little elements, those little things that make up a self-defense argument, but saying it in layman's terms. And she's pointing out that Smoke, the person with the firearm found next to them, was doing all of this over a female, which, if you ask me, I get that it's passionate, I get that it's realistic, I get that it happens, but to me, that's unreasonable. She's also showing you that Smoke's actions and Smoke's reason for being there is unreasonable. That's just something you shouldn't go show up to somebody's place of residence and press them about. And if we're going to take issue with Tuitt being in possession of a firearm because he's a felon, that he shouldn't be in possession because of another conviction he has, well then, how am I supposed to reconcile I don't know if Smoke has a history, but how am I supposed to, as a person, think it's okay for somebody to go and show up and press somebody with a firearm on them? If you ask me to think one's bad, I think if we take the story that Smoke shows up to do this, if that's what went down, I think it's worse to set the precedent that that's how we should handle things. And I don't love the idea that somebody that's in a position to be pressed, and there's police all around, right around, according to Forte, what we're going to hear Forte say, the police aren't stopping this, and somebody's dead now. So that's my rant, you guys. Let's get back to Nicole because she's making much better arguments. I'm just trying to figure out why this is supposed to be the way things work. Oh.
After 5 minutes of arguing, when he finally pulls his own firearm, the evidence will show that he would not stop. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of trial, we'll be able to speak to you again during closing arguments and how the law applies. But we're confident that we have found a group that is willing to look at all of the evidence, apply the law, and seek the truth. Because that young man is not guilty for each and every count. That young man should not be sitting at that table. That young man should not have to be shot in order to not sit at that table. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fegan.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a little after